Hello everyone, welcome to the MuseScore Café. This is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and this is my regular weekly series I do on Wednesdays where we talk about some aspect of making music with MuseScore. And this being the first Wednesday of the month, as many of you know, this will be the Ask Me Anything session. So you can ask me any questions, mostly about MuseScore. I'm happy to try to answer other things about music or whatever else, but we'll mostly be talking about MuseScore, whatever questions you have. So by all means, as you check in, if you've got some questions, drop them into the chat. I already see one question from Richard, and that is one I can definitely answer quickly with mostly yes. So Richard's question here is, will MuseScore 3 compositions directly load into MuseScore 4 without any alterations? And yeah, the answer is mostly yes. For the most part, everything basically works. If you have a MuseScore 3 file, everything comes in. The only thing that wouldn't work for the most part are if you have specific playback customizations that you've done via the, let me get my volume where I want it. If you've done specific playback customizations, like via the piano roll editor or any other means where you've done like tweaks to the playbacks of things, or you're using specific alternate sounds within sound fonts or some particular playback tweaks that won't come through unaltered, and you'll need to find other solutions for. Pretty much everything else will just work, and in general, layout will just be better. So if you've got a particular score you'd like me to try to load in, go ahead and attach it in here into the chat, and I'll take a look at it and we'll see. Anyhow, that's the general answer to that question. So yeah, it should work pretty well, but if you want to drop one in and let me open it, that would be fine. All right, now Dennis has a really a good question here. Did I ever finish my alignment plugin? All right, so yeah, I want to do a whole session on plugins here. It sounds metallic today. One moment. I'm going to talk. I'm talking. Yes, it's coming through the wrong microphone, isn't it? Let me see if I can fix that. Did you all hear the music? Did you hear the cafe theme music? 1 second. It says it's coming in through there. There. What the? Hello? Huh. Well, that's extremely disappointing. But thanks for the heads up. And, I get to do my, so output to headphones, input from here. This is how I usually have things set up. Output, default. Yeah, okay. Yes, not even the laptop mic. It's the overhead mic. It's the overhead mic that I usually use for my when I do the overhead shot of the keyboard. It doesn't seem. That's quite curious that that's off, and that's just going to be one of those things, I guess, today. Yeah. Everything is connected the way it should be, so I think we're just going to live with non-ideal sound. Now, if we get to the point where we need to hear MuseScore, I will do my best to make that happen. For now, let's live with it, okay? All right, so I want to address Dennis's question about this, about my alignment plugin. So yeah, plugins in general work in MuseScore 4 with some limitations. So that the development team really wants to totally redo the plugin system. They want to redo how plugins work on a number of levels. So there's a few limitations to how plugins work right now that they want to eventually fix, but right now things are a little funny. So I want to show you how, let me just create a new score. I thought I hit Control N, and I know I did. Do I have another window already open, or is it just going to be one of those days where nothing works as it should? Could well be one of those days. Let's close this guy. Curious. Okay. Keyboard shortcuts aren't working either right now, so that's kind of weird too. Sorry, I'm being discombobulated, but now I'm thrown off by all these things. So I'm going to create a score here, and I'll create it for Grand Staff here. And I want to show you my alignment plugin, what it does. So let's say we've got some notes, and I put some text here. Text. Oops, I think I did lyrics. Let me do Control T for text here, and I'll put some text here. And I'll put some text here. All right, I now have texts at different levels because automatic placement avoids collisions. The thing that my alignment plugin that I have written that's mostly working, still could use a little tweaks, but you can see I've developed it. I've given it a shortcut L. By the way, if you go to Plugins, Manage Plugins, you'll see the plugins that come pre-installed in MuseScore listed here, and then you can select one of them and then click Enable to enable it. And the same is going to be true for any plugins you download. So I'm going to do a whole session on plugins once I've got a few more things in place. But yeah, my Align plugin is actually working reasonably well at this point. I've made a number of improvements since you saw it last. So I've got these three text elements selected. I'm going to press L, and boom, they're aligned, right? So that's pretty cool. When I did this before, the question came up about fingering. And what happens if I enter fingering and want that aligned? And I didn't have that working before, but I think I do now. Let's try this. I'm going to add some fingering. And 1, 2, 3. I'm going to be very not smart about my fingering here. Here's all my fingerings. And so I'll click the 1, shift click the 8, and now all those fingerings are selected. Press L, boom, they're all aligned. So yes, my alignment plugin is working pretty well. Now, if you want to see what's not working as well, and this is so minor, but it bugs me. Let me enter some, let me undo all of that and undo. I'm going to take these texts and move them below the staff with X. And now I'll move this whole music down an octave so that, again, I'm going to have to align these three texts. So click, shift click, and then L to align them. Now I'm going to undo. Undo did a weird thing. It's going to take 2 undos to get it back when you have text below the staff. That's the weird thing about this plugin based on how it's worked, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find a way around it, so I might just publish it the way it is. All right, so anyhow, that's that. Now I'm going to address other questions here about Muse Hub. So Muse Hub is, the program that allows you to download MuseScore, but also it's what lets you download the Muse sounds. And it kind of runs in the background while you're doing other things by default. It normally runs in the background and checks for updates kind of periodically. And Christopher is saying it seems to run once or so a day, but I think it's actually running more than that. I think it's running constantly and just looking for updates on a more regular basis, but I don't really know. So how would you know if something's been updated? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, Christopher. I just don't. I don't know if there's I think there's a log. So I'm going to actually start Muse Hub because I'm a little curious myself. So in my case, I have to start on my Chromebook system here. I have to go through a little manual process to start it. And so I'm going to run Muse Hub and take a look to see if I see anything interesting in here about logs. So I'm clicking. There's a button here, a gear button at the top right, and I see automatically keep things up to date. So here, view application logs. That could be interesting. Let's check that out. If I click that, there's all sorts of logs here. So yeah, maybe poke around the logs. So you use the gear icon to get to the settings, and then you'll see a button that says open for view application logs. And there's a series of files there. Client log, service log, user settings. Let me try client log. And I think I have to like open that somehow separately. But it is just a document and it tells you where it is. So in any case, that could possibly be, it might have some useful information. So could I enable captions? Captions, so Richard, are you talking about in MuseScore? Because in MuseScore, I definitely have my captions going, and that's where, if that's what you mean, the keyboard things there. Maybe you've got another question that's not that, but anyhow, that's all I know about logs. So John is asking, I'm going to go back to some of the other questions, but since I was just talking about fingering, John is talking about PIMAC fingering for, I don't even know what those fingers are. I'd like to think I is index finger, but I don't really know. M is middle, perhaps, I don't know. But no, in piano scores, it's one through 5. 1 for the thumb, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in piano, we number the fingers that way. So that's why I'm usually entering numbers. So also for a relatively easier question here, Rachel's asking about the sound. Well, it's an easy question to answer about in general, Rachel. If how do you get Muse sounds from Muse Hub into MuseScore? Once you download those sounds, they should show up automatically. You shouldn't have to do anything special to make that happen. So in my case, let's see. I have Muse Hub running, it's showing me, it will show me which sounds are downloaded. In my case, it's all of them. And then when I go to my score here, if I open the mixer by pressing, say, the mixer button, I will see grand piano selected as the sound. It'll be there under Muse sounds. So you shouldn't have to do anything special other than maybe restart MuseScore. Now, if something goes wrong, then there's some troubleshooting to do, and we would probably need to do that offline. But normally, if you've downloaded Muse Sounds, then everything should use it by default. Any new scores you create will use Muse Sounds by default, assuming their instruments are there. Like there's not guitars in Muse Sounds, but all the orchestral instruments should use Muse Sounds by default. So any new scores you create will use it by default. Any scores from MuseScore 3 will use Muse Sounds by default. If you created scores in MuseScore 4 before downloading Muse Sounds, it won't automatically flip them over. You'll need to go to View and then Playback Setup. And here you'll be able to flip the score between MuseScore Basic, the sounds you started off with, and Muse Sounds. So if you had a score you created in MuseScore 4 before you had Muse Sounds, you'll need to manually flip them over that way. So, so there's that. And Stephen Bryant is asking about Muse Hub stop running. And yeah, so Muse Hub, I know very little about Muse Hub. It's not part of like the whole open source project that I've worked on. It's sort of this special installer that was created to allow installation of multiple programs, not even just MuseScore, but also Audacity and other things. And so I really know little about it. And all I can say is I start it, I download things manually, and then I close it down because I'm more comfortable with it that way. And that way I also know when it's downloaded something because I open it up, I watch it download the thing, and then I close it. Now, did I close it today? No, I didn't. So let me do that. I will close it right there. So I typically close Muse Hub when I'm not actively downloading. And every day I check for updates. On Linux, that's how I do it, because I mentioned I'm on a Chromebook, but the Chromebook is really running Linux. On Windows, the process for shutting down Muse Hub, I'm not as familiar with how that works. So I'm going to back up now to other questions, and I know there was one about playback and multiple voices. Let me get to the multiple voices one before I get too far ahead of myself here. So Nick, you're asking about working with multiple voices and creating second notes around dotted notes. So non-dotted note is required. No, that's a good question, except it's a little not clear. But what I'm going to do is load that score, and then we'll get to see what you're talking about. So let's see, Garden Seasons right here. And what you're saying is bar 3 needs something. And so I want to see what bar 3 needs. Bar 3, I guess you're talking about right here. So this is really bar 2. If the pickup is really bar 0, this is bar 1, this is bar 2. I'm guessing that that's what you're talking about. So you've got a dotted note in one voice, yes. Non-dotted note for the second voice. Try to enter the quarter note on voice 2. So I'm going to enter that measure right now, and then we're just going to see what happens, all right? So I'm going to enter that measure. It's da-da-da-da-dum. So let's do that. I'm going to come in here, and let's just watch what I do. I'll go N for note input mode, and I'm going to do voice 1 first. So 5 dot, and then F, and then 16th notes. Ba-dum, and then quarter notes. Bum, bum. So there's my voice 1. Voice 2 is ba-da-da-dum, all quarter notes. So I'm going to control left to get back to the beginning of the measure, and then control alt 2 to switch to voice 2, or you can just click the voice 2 button. Notice I am in note input mode when I do that. Anytime you press those voice buttons, you'd better be in note input mode already. Otherwise, it's going to change a note you've already entered. So that might be what you're not getting correct there. If you're already, so if I, like for instance, if I click that note, I'm not in note input mode. If I click the voice 2 button, boom, it changes that note, moves to voice 2. But that's not what I want. So I make sure I'm in note input mode. Then I switch to voice 2, and now I can enter whatever I want. 5, C, D, D, C. So my guess is that's what you had going on, is that maybe you tried to press a voice button while you weren't in note input mode, and that will indeed cause problems. It's how you move notes between voices, but that's probably not what you wanted to do. So if that's not what you're asking, see if you can maybe give me a little more detail, maybe attach your score as you have it and explain which note you're having trouble with, but I think maybe that'll help. Okay, so I notice, let's see, Christopher is asking about some playback subtleties. And so here, what I will say is that Muse Sounds is a two-edged sword. It provides amazing results right out of the box. But if you want to tweak things, you're a little bit limited. You're a lot limited, in fact. There's not a lot of tweaking you can currently do with Muse Sounds. Now, this is all being worked on. Like when MuseScore 4.1 comes out, there'll be additional tweaking, and there'll be additional stuff in further releases after that. But right now, there's very little tweaking you can do to the playback if you're using Muse Sounds. If you switch to using sound fonts, you can tweak velocity settings in properties, right? You can come to the properties panel and then click playback when you have a note selected, and you can tweak the tuning and you can tweak the velocity and do some other things like that. But short of just adding actual articulation marks to your score, which will be interpreted correctly, there's very little that you can do if you're using Muse Sounds. So if if you want to, like, I would recommend starting, Christopher, like starting a post, do a new post in the community, attach your score, explain what you want to do, and we'll see if we can find some clever way of dealing with it. But yeah, it's, for the most part, it's going to be what you hear is what you get with Muse Sounds for the most part. All right, Frank Dinkelman has a question about running as a portable app. So MuseScore 4, first of all, I don't actually know. Did you actually find the portable app version of MuseScore 4? Because to be honest, I don't know that one exists. I don't know that there is a portable app version. So I kind of want to find that out. I'm going to go to musescore.org and go to the download page, download software, and see. These are the Linux versions. Yeah, I kind of don't think there is currently an official portable app version of, and for people who don't know, portable app is a thing that exists for Windows that allows you to put an app on a thumb drive, on a USB drive, and then run it directly from there without needing to install it, which is nice because it allows you to like run it then on a computer at a public library or at a school or somewhere where you're not allowed to install things. So I don't know that there is an official portable app version of MuseScore, but there is something that is useful. Let's see, how about the placement of the assortment of single instruments from the special single file instrument zip? So, but when you talk about the special single file instrument zip version, are you talking about the one that I created, that that special zip file with all the sounds, MS Basic sounds split up? I think that might be what you're talking about, but I'm not sure. Yeah, you would have to get those placed into your own personal folder. And yeah, so I'm not sure how you would do that. Yeah, so Frank, that's what I was going to suggest. The nightly builds, even though there's not an official portable app version, there is the nightly builds. So if on that download page, and this is more for other people since you've already figured out, if you scroll down to the bottom and where it says nightly builds download page, I'm going to suggest that when you do this, the nightly builds for Windows, you will see that there's 4.0.2 and also Master. Master is what's eventually going to become 4.1, and this is now very experimental. When we get close to release, then that will be like pretty stable and good quality. But right now they're adding new features. They're doing stuff. What I understand, today's Master build crashes on startup, and they put in a fix and it won't be there till tomorrow. So the Master build is not one I would recommend, but the 4.0.2 latest 4.0.2 build is basically essentially the same as the installed 4.0.2. It's just one that once you download it, you can run it from a USB drive. So it does require then you to have to figure out, where to put your sound fonts folder and where to put your, scores folder, so that, that you want them stored, you want those things stored on the thumb drive also rather than on the computer. You'll have to use a little bit of ingenuity there, and I think you're probably one step ahead of me on that. But basically the answer is no, there is no automation for any of that. What you're figuring out is probably what you need to do. All right. So then if you can ask a more specific question, I can try to help. What I would suggest is, though, that you save your, you set MuseScore in preferences to, let's see, I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then under Folders is where you can say where you want your scores folder to be, where you want your styles folder, and all these things. And then you can set these to be on the thumb drive itself. Now, the problem is every time you stick that thumb drive in another computer, it's probably going to have a different drive letter. I mean, yeah, maybe it's drive D or E, but you won't know that for sure. So it's going to be a mess a little bit. But yeah, basically whatever mess you're discovering, yeah, that's what there is. Okay. Jeff is talking about the Muse Hub icon, and the Muse Hub icon is on Linux wasn't working for me. I had to actually edit one of the install files to get it to show up. But the icon for Muse Hub is supposed to be white with some colored background on it. So just so you can see what it's supposed to look like, here is what the Muse Hub icon is supposed to look like. Yeah, I didn't start the background service, but this right here, it's kind of a stylized M. Two vertical bars, two long vertical bars with a short vertical bar in the middle. That is the Muse Hub icon. It's supposed to look like an M, I assume. So that's what it should look like, but I don't know. So let's see. Next, okay, so first of all, I'm going to pronounce your name the best way I can. I'm going to say Shayana Marie Ward. Now, I know you also go by a number of different handles that I've interacted with you, but, feel free to, phonetically tell me how I should address you so that because I always feel really bad, because my name gets butchered so much when people try to pronounce it and misspelled, right? People spell it with a K, so I am so oversensitive to want to say people's names right or write people's names right, and so I like to know how to say things. So Control Left, Control Left to move back to the start of the measure is really great because then you don't have to keep leaving and entering node input mode. I like that a lot, but to be honest, sometimes I do just leave and come back. But I'm a pretty big fan of the shortcuts. Control Left to move left, Alt up down. Moves between states. There's one people might not know. If you're in node input mode, Alt down. So Alt down is normally the shortcut to move down a staff, but on this system, it is a reserved shortcut on my Chromebook. It does something else, so I had to redefine it to be the left square bracket, but normally Alt down will move you up and down between the voices in a staff and then down to the next staff. So Alt up down moves you up and down, Control Left and Control Right moves you left and right by measure, and of course left and right by itself moves you note by note. There's all sorts of really cool navigation shortcuts that you can read about in the handbook. My course goes into a lot of detail also. So let's see. Okay, Margie has a question about ties that are stacked. A short tie under a long tie. Oh gosh, yeah. So ties in MuseScore 3, first of all, were a big mess when you had complicated chords. If you tried to if you had, say, a chord like C, D, and E, and then you wanted to tie that to another chord, you're going to get a big mess of overlapping ties in MuseScore 3. In MuseScore 4, they decided to clean up the mess, but they did it by kind of cheating and just saying, hey, let's just start the tie after all the overlapping notes, and that will be good enough. I'm not crazy about that as a solution. I'm not going to say it was. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say it's a case of the cure being worse than the disease, but I am saying, yeah, I don't think it's that much better. But it does give you a good starting point to then adjust these things manually. So you can manually make that tie longer and manually make this tie longer and so forth, right? So you can do manual adjustments to those ties. So you were asking about the Rite of Spring. And of course, that is what I put up as our notation project. So let's take a look at that, because frankly, I didn't try it yet. I'm letting you guys try the Rite of Spring project here. And, whoa. Yeah, here we go. So what's going on here is I think some of the things that you're looking at as ties are really slurs, right? Like Gracenotes are not ties, those are slurs. So there is actually no ties at all in that first passage. In fact, yeah, here's the first tie that I see is in this line right here there's a tie. But these lines here are all slurs. And slurs within slurs, including, yeah, we got stack of slurs here. There's a big tall slur from here to here, a smaller slur from here to here, another smaller slur from here to here, and a tiny little slur from there to there. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm going to guess that it's let's see. Yeah, so assuming that you enter those as slurs, it should actually work out okay. But yeah, let me give it a quick. Well, first of all, I'm going to go on to another question, and then you can first just confirm for me were you actually meaning slurs? Because if you use ties by mistake, you're going to have all sorts of problems. But if you're using slurs, I would think things would maybe work okay, but they might need some manual adjustment. Meanwhile, Rachel is talking about playing back. When you hit the playback button, it's often the case that it takes Muse sounds like half a second to kind of kick in. It's like a sort of like when I play this, right? You didn't hear the downbeat there. Muse sounds takes like half a second to kick in sometimes. And so, yeah, that's the way it is during playback. You can start a measure earlier, right? And if you do that, that kind of works around it. And when you export it to MP3 or upload it to MuseScore.com or anything like that, the playback's going to be fine. It's just the live playback will often be off. And the thing is, now it's fine, right? If I clicked the bar line, sometimes it plays, you know, a little better if you click not a note, but click something else like a bar line or the first clef. Like if I click the clef here, it plays well. If I click the note, it sometimes gets chopped off. So that's my suggestion, is don't click a note, click something to the left of it. And often it can just be the bar line or the clef, and that'll be good enough. So that's my quick little check there. Rachel's asking, can you enter voice 2 before voice 1? Absolutely. You can enter the voices in any order. Can you enter lyrics before notes? No. MuseScore needs to know what beat those lyrics are associated with in order for this to work. Okay, and Margie's saying that that the slurs are sort of flipping around as you enter them. And yeah, that makes some amount of sense. I'm going to try this in a minute and find out. But meanwhile, I'm going to check out Rachel's question about spacing, because yeah, spacing can be interesting, you know, things going on. So what I'm going to do is download, and yes, I know that we're not hearing, oh yeah, so the playback, duh, of course, the playback were not working. So you all didn't hear that demonstration, but take my word for it. When I started the playback by clicking a note, the beginning of the note got cut off, right? A few hundred milliseconds or so. I don't know how long it is. A fraction of a second of the note gets cut off if you select the note and then start playback. If you select something to the left of the note and start playback, it generally works really well. So yeah, I don't know why I'm having the playback not working. The things that I know that could try to cause, let me try one thing, because let me try this. Give me a second. This time I'm going to share audio. All right, I'm sharing audio now. So the first question is, am I echoing? And then the second question is, can you hear MuseScore? So 2 questions. Am I echoing? Can you hear MuseScore? What I just did is going to cause echo to happen in some cases, but I think we might be okay right now. So let me know about that. Meanwhile, I was going over to download Rachel's score here. Oops, I was in the right folder already. That's the folder I wanted to be in, and I lost it. Oh well. Here it is. So I'm going to load your score, Rachel, and we'll see why the spacing is off. I have my guesses. There's a few things that commonly happen that can make spacing be funny. And in office hours yesterday, we worked with one score where someone had accidentally entered a lot of empty lyrics. In your case here, I think what's happening is this is just MuseScore trying to space things evenly. You have 3 systems on that first page, and they are being spaced kind of appropriately. But your second page has only 2 systems. Your third page has only 2 systems, and your last page has only 1 system. So MuseScore is trying to make up better use of the page, right? On the second page here, you'll notice it is stretched it down to reach the bottom margin. And that is what most professional editors would do. They don't like to have uneven bottom margins. That's like a pet peeve of most professional editors that I know, is having uneven margins. They really hate that. So MuseScore by default is going to try to stretch out your music to reach the bottom margin, and that's why the second and third pages do that. For the last page, it's just not going to work, right? I mean, if it tried to stretch all the way to the bottom, it wouldn't. It would just look stupid. So MuseScore has a point where it gives up on that stretching. So I'm going to show you where the settings are to play with this, and then you can play with it if you go to Format, Style, and then I'm going to click where it says Page, and there's a couple different settings here. There's Enable Vertical Justification of Staves. There's Disable Justification of Staves. Now, by the way, if you're in my course, go through the page formatting, and page layout, I forget what it's called, section. I've got some really detailed lessons in the course on that topic. So if you go to the course, let me show you where they are. If you go to Mastering MuseScore 4, oh, I suppose I should be checking to see if I'm echoing, because I must be really annoying people if I am. Still can't hear music. All right, so all right. Oh well, that was something I thought might have worked, but apparently it didn't. Don't know why. Oh well. Okay, so in MuseScore 4 course, down towards the bottom, you'll see this whole section here called Formatting, and you'll see Pages and Vertical Layout, and Adjusting Content of Pages. These couple of sections right here are going to go into a lot of detail on this, and really the whole section kind of works together. So you really want to start at the beginning of that section and work your way through. But I go into quite a lot of detail on this stuff. But the short answer is vertical justification of staves means within a system, it's going to try to stretch those. If I disable that, MuseScore is not going to add space between systems, within systems anymore, and you will get ragged margins. Now this frankly looks terrible to have that big giant empty space there. So instead of disabling the vertical justification, what I will recommend is playing with these settings here of max fill distance. You can reduce how far MuseScore is willing to try to fill the page. You can also reduce the max staff distance, so MuseScore won't try to do that, and increase the max system distance, and all these different settings in here that will control how MuseScore tries to spread the staves through your page. So I will recommend going through the course, checking out those lessons specifically, and then playing around with the settings. So, all right. Joanne is talking about T to tie to the next note on the same pitch. So, oh, Joanne, yes. What's going on is you're not supposed to enter the next note at all. So let me enter a note here. If I enter an E, don't enter the other E. Don't enter it at all. Just type T, and you get the note. It enters the note and ties it in one step. What you must have been doing was entering an E, then entering another E, then going back and tying it. But you didn't have to do any of that. Just enter the E and then immediately press T. If I press T right now, it ties it to a quarter note. But if I undo that and type 4T, it ties it to an eighth. So the process again is enter the note, say 6E, then select the duration you want to tie to, like 4, and then press T. And when you press T, it enters the note and ties it all in one step. Okay, so yeah, and definitely, Margie, I see your comment about entering page breaks, and yeah, when you're, one of the things that I might do if I was working on that score, in fact, I'm just going to undo all those changes I just made to this score here. What I probably might do is put a page break on the second system there, so now there's 2 systems on every page. The first page is a little funny now, but I can just add space between the title frame and the first system. That's the way I would do that. So if I go to properties and increase where it says gap below, now it'll push that stuff down and get something more like this, right? You can play around with that more, but now you have your systems more evenly distributed on the pages. Distributing the systems evenly across the pages is the sort of more professional way to do this. It's how you avoid having ragged bottom margins, is by having similar content from page to page. But it is true that that first page is a little funny because one system is just the piano. Frankly, it might not have been worth it to hide the empty staves there. Maybe you would have been better off not hiding the empty staves, because all it does is create a bunch of wasted space, either at the beginning of the score or at the end of the score. So you might have been better off not hiding them. But that's a personal decision. I'll leave that up to you. Okay, so let's see. I do want to try to do the. I want to try that first measure of the bassoon solo. So I'm going to try it. And Rachel, you're assuming you can't change settings by page. You're correct. Those settings are global, and the whole point is to find settings that work well. You can use spacers to add space in different places, to close up space in different places. So you can add spacers from the layout palette to get things like that. Oh, Stephen's got a good observation there. What if I took that first system and just added a break there? And then add another break here, so that now that piano part takes up 2 systems, and now I can get rid of all that weird extra space there. This doesn't look so bad here, right? So anyhow, doing things like that, and actually when I look at this, you know, this system here is a little crowded. Maybe you'd be best off going through and just adding a few more breaks in places. Like here's a thing for me personally. This gets subjective again, but I don't like things like this, new sections of a piece starting in the middle of a system. I would just assume there'd be a break right there so that the next section starts on a new system, right? And it's not like required that always happen, but it's often nicer. And then if you take that and go through your whole score that way, and with an eye to doing that, and also watching the overall spacing of things, you can often get an answer you're going to like better than anything you would do just by fiddling with the spacing. In other words, by actually adding breaks to give yourself more systems with the music distributed across those systems and the systems distributed across the pages, intelligently, like with like your intelligence, as opposed to MuseScore just saying, well, I can fit this measure here, I'm gonna. Yeah, that measure fit there, but I think it's better to put it on the next line. So try to make some decisions like that, and you might find some things that work well for you. So so I like that. I like that. I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. So to force 2 systems into one is the opposite question. Like right here, I'm looking at this andantino section and seeing, what if I want to get that to start at the beginning? What you really want now is to get all of these measures of moderato. Well, first of all, you could add a break and say, hey, I'm going to have 2 systems here. 1, 2, and have that moderato section be 4 measures per line. And that would be fine. But if you wanted to try to get all those measures onto one system, select them all, and then you're going to use the reduce stretch command. Format, stretch, decrease layout stretch, or the left curly brace. And you're going to do that a couple of times or as many times as necessary until they maybe all start fitting on one system. And at some point it might not work. There just might physically not be enough room. But those are your limits. You saw that I got one more measure on, but at some point it's like, no, I can't do that without notes actually overlapping. Then is what you would want to do is reduce the overall staff size by going to Format, Page Settings, and reducing this staff size a little bit. That default staff size is bigger than you need for choral music anyhow, because choral music we read from close up. It's not on a music stand further away. So usually the default, usually most choral music is at a staff size of more like 1.5 instead of 1.75. And then it's much easier to fit more stuff onto, like here, now it fit very easily onto one system, at least after also reducing stretch. So that's something else to consider. So I do want to get back, though, to that bassoon thing, because now I'm really curious. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try it myself. So I'm going to select everything in this score, delete it. I'm going to change that first clef to tenor clef. And now I'm going to start entering those notes. So let's find where that thing is. And of course, I don't remember where it is. It's one of my windows floating over here somewhere. And it will take me a moment to find it because I didn't have the forethought. Here we go. C, B, C. And oh, can I read that note is a C? No, I just know it's a C. I know that solo starts with a C. So let's see. It's C and then B, G, E, B, A. All right, so 5, C, and then 3, B, G, E, B, A. So far, so good. And that A is actually a triplet, so I'll hit Control-3. I'm going to add my couple of grace notes there. There we go. And then there's a note over here somewhere that it's going to have to, what is that, about an A? Yeah. So let's try to enter our slurs now. I'm going to enter the slur from here to there. And what I did is I clicked one note, Control-clicked another, and type S. Great. Now I'm going to do the same here. Click, Control-click, hit S. And it wants it underneath, but if I click it and press X, now it's above. And then the other slur is from that C to the A. So again, click that, click the A, Control-click the A, that is. S for the slur. And there we go. So the Gracenote slur was the only one I had to flip. But when you look at this, the slurs are colliding, right? There's pretty decent algorithms for avoiding collisions in MuseScore, but there's certain cases that don't get handled, and collisions between overlapping slurs is one of them. In this case, I think that this middle slur here is too rounded. Let me show you how I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to select it and then select this little middle handle here, and I'm going to hit the down arrow to flatten that guy. And actually, I'm also going to click this guy and hit down arrow just to move it down a bit. And then maybe the top one, I'm going to select the end handle and move it up a little bit. And that's, to a rough approximation, how I would do it. Now, sometimes when you're adjusting the shape of a slur, you'll see funny things happen to it along the way because it's trying to readjust as you're adjusting. So you might want to turn off autoplace before you start manually tweaking the shape of a slur. If it starts fighting you, turn off autoplace. But it won't always fight you, and I like to leave it on because it is good for it to be able to avoid collisions. If you turn off autoplace, it's going to suddenly allow it to start colliding with other things, and you won't want that. So, I don't know. There you go. So yeah, Margie, yeah, you were talking about shift, yeah, the left brace, and so yeah, it'll work sometimes, but only up to a limit. And actually, I reduced the size of the score to get around that limit, but I'm going to change something else now. I'm going to go back to the full size thing, and this time, instead of reducing the overall size of the score, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to go to Format, Style, and under Lyrics, see this one here that says min distance? This is saying that the lyrics themselves are going to have to be at least 1/4 of a staff space apart. If I reduce that down to 0, it's going to allow the lyrics to actually physically touch. And I wanted to see if that in itself would allow more to fit. And the answer seems to be no. So I'm going to reset that. But now I'm going to try something else. Again, in Format, Style, I'm going to go to Measure. And here is the minimum note distance. I'm going to see if reducing the minimum note distance will allow things. There we go. So by reducing the minimum note distance, I created a situation where MuseScore allowed things to fit. But look what happened. We end up with notes that really don't look good because that really is too close together. MuseScore was right to not have allowed that, I think. But if you want it, you got it. And then you could try to manually adjust the position of that note, right? You can select that note and then under Appearance, go to the leading space. You want to use leading space so it moves the entire vertical slice at once. So if I increase that leading space, oh, but then it doesn't fit anymore. And yeah, I'd have to reduce that minimum distance more. I feel like if you have to fight it like that, you're fighting the wrong battle. You're better off usually, this look just wasn't good. It's too crowded. And that's because the music is too big to fit this many measures. So generally speaking, if you're having trouble fitting things, people resist making music smaller, but it's usually the right answer because it allows it to fit without looking crowded. And that's really what you want. You want it to fit and not looking crowded. Just reducing the size of the music by 10% or less than 10% is often more than enough to fit more measures on a system and make very little difference in the readability, except that it allows there to be more white space and therefore not look so crowded. So I'm a big fan of slight reductions of music, of the size of the music, as opposed to making things look more crowded. So Margie's asking if the Gracenotes can be smaller. And yeah, they can. The default size is 80%, I think, or 75%. But if we go to Format, so it's the ledger lines here are what's causing them to take horizontal space. But if you're talking about the size of the note heads, I'm going to go to Format, Style, and Notes. Nope, not notes, sizes. Here's where it sets the Gracenote size. It's 70% by default, so let's just crank that down. And now it's 60%. And now the Gracenotes are smaller. So, and that's a global setting for the Gracenotes. So, and that'll make all Gracenotes a little smaller. You know, the default was chosen by a professional engraver, so I wouldn't be in a hurry to override his decisions. But, you know, different professional engravers have different opinions on how big it should be. And so if you think it's going to work for you, whatever, go for it. All right, I'm hitting to the end of the time I want to do things here. And I'm not sure if I missed any questions along the way. So someone might want to let me know if I've missed something from earlier on that I can what about duration change? So I think I answered that, Joanne. You type the note, you type the new duration, press T. So there you go. Okay, suggest how the screen reader can track of how many systems. So Christopher, unfortunately, no, I have no good answer. There's almost nothing about page layout that I feel can effectively be done via screen reader feedback only. And the thing is, even if it was telling you which system was on which page, I will tell you a way to find that out. It's still not going to be enough for you to know if visually it looks bad or not, right? So I kind of feel like those settings are going to be really hard no matter what. But I will tell you how you can get that information. At least I think I can. I'm going to flip over to the MuseScore theme music, except I closed it. I'll need to reopen it anyhow, so I'm just going to do that. Let's reopen the MuseScore Café theme music. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the find facility to jump to a particular page. Like if I want to know how many measures are on the first page, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go Control F and then type P2. That jumps to page 2. And when it goes to page 2, it just positions the view there. It doesn't select anything. But I think, if I now go to Note Input Mode, oh, I have to leave the find. So let me hit Enter to close the find dialog, and it looks like nothing is actually selected. Let me try Shift L. What does that select? Nothing. Let me go to Note Input Mode by pressing N. Now, my theory here is that if you use find to jump to a particular page, in principle, maybe you would be able to get it to tell you what measure you're on, and then you would know which measures start which pages, and maybe that would be useful, but frankly, I just don't have a good answer. It wasn't designed to give that kind of feedback, and I'm not entirely positive that feedback would be as useful as you want it to be anyhow. But it is definitely a limitation in MuseScore that is hard to get that feedback, and it shouldn't be that hard. So I would definitely suggest maybe submitting an issue on GitHub requesting that people try to think of a good way of providing that kind of feedback, because it would be good feedback to have, even if it's a little hard to act on. Okay, so I'm mostly caught up here. Allison's talking about the worksheets that I use in the basic music theory. And the thing is, I use a lot of techniques for those worksheets. I use frames, I use section breaks, I use a lot of different techniques. Every technique that I use is covered in some lesson or other, but there's not necessarily one lesson on creating worksheets. On the other hand, if you dig back in the archives of the MuseScore Café, I think you will eventually find that there are a few sessions I do called MuseScore in Education. One of them might have even just called Worksheets. There's a few different sessions where I've done worksheets before, but I haven't done that with MuseScore 4 yet, so I'm kind of due. So maybe I'll do a session on worksheets specifically in an upcoming session. All right. Yeah, definitely, as Richard's saying, if the measures are numbered, and the status bar and therefore the screen reader will tell you which measures on which page, and therefore you'll know how many measures, but it still won't tell you how they distribute from system to system. There is an undocumented command you can define a shortcut for that moves to the next system. Yeah, there's probably clever ways of doing this, but I don't have a great answer for you. So I think with that said, I'm going to say that I'm as caught up as I can reasonably be here, and then call it a success. So despite the fact that I wasn't able to get sound working for some reason, and obviously I'll figure this out before we actually do the master class tomorrow. But for now, I'm playing this score, and you can't hear it, right? It's too bad. It is just too bad. But in any case, it is what it is, right? So hope you got something out of the session. Covered a lot of different topics, things I don't talk about all the time, right? A lot of interesting, gnarly little details. It was kind of fun for me dealing with some things that I haven't dealt with before. So hopefully you found it useful. And oh, you can hear the music now. Wow. All right. Well, then that's good. So what I did that second time did work. It just took a minute to catch up. So great. So in any case, yeah, tomorrow we'll do the music masterclass. We'll be talking more about rhythm, because we'll be, trying to track what we're dealing with in the basic theory course. I will say, if you've tried your hand at the rhythmic transcription project, please post your results. I'd love to be able to talk about your experiences in that. I'm going to send out a little notification to everyone to make sure that you all saw that the new lessons are up and all, because I need to get in the habit of like doing that right after I post the lessons, make sure that everyone sees them. But yes, there is a whole batch of new lessons that went up on Monday, and a new project and all. So we'll be back here next week with a topic to be determined, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.